We finally have a live-action adaptation of the Percy Jackson series! Or do we? Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, and here I am going on another rant. This time it's Percy Jackson! And you guys can't tell, which I mean kind of hard to tell, I am a fan of the books. Unfortunately, this isn't all of them, but finances are a little tough this year. But I started reading the series when I was in 6th grade. By that time, that's when the 4th book was released, so I kind of arrived a little bit late, but still early enough that I was part of the bandwagon when the 5th book was released. And then everything else. I also was aware enough of the franchise of the movie coming out, and I actually got to see the movie in theaters. By itself was fine. I initially thought it was fine, as a 13-year-old. Still is learning a little bit more about movies at that point. Wasn't fully on board on movies yet, but I thought the movie was initially fine. But after seeing a bunch of reviews and people talking about it, and even the creator himself, Rick Riordan, coming out to bash on the first movie specifically, I finally started, understanding, oh yeah, that movie was not a good adaptation. That wasn't Percy Jackson. Or that wasn't Percy Jackson in The Lightning Thief. And then the second movie came out and I never saw it. Not because I didn't want to see it. I actually did want to see it. But I just never really got an opportunity to do so. But my sister Melody actually did see it in theaters. And when I tried to talk to her about my knowledge from the books and, try to have a conversation with her, she did not understand a word that I was saying. That kind of sold into me. I was like, okay, yeah, no, movies are bad. Nope. And to this day, I still never seen the second movie. And I don't plan to ever see the second movie. So everyone in the comments, or the few people that do watch my videos, no, I will not be doing a review on the movies. Everything that could be said about the movies as movies and as an adaptation has already been said. And there's nothing more I can add to the conversation. Especially since my feelings on the movies align with everybody else's. So, no review on the movies whatsoever. Go back a little bit, let's talk about the book, the first book specifically. Percy Jackson and Olympians, The Lightning Thief came out in 2005, written by Rick Riordan. And originally, this story started out as a simple bedtime story for his kids. But over time, his kids convinced him to actually get it published for more people to read. And of course, eventually did. It became an almost instant overnight hit, so to speak. And a lot of people who read it really connected with the characters and really, really loved it. Especially those who have ADHD or are dyslexic, because the main character himself, Percy Jackson, has ADHD and dyslexia. Which, at the time, those kinds of traits in a protagonist character isn't all that common. And when it was, it's usually in the negative. And when it is mentioned, it's like a kind of a side minor thing, or it's made fun of. So it wasn't really all that common. Yeah, Percy Jackson coming out and he's like, yeah, I'm a kid with ADHD and dyslexia, but a hero to everybody who, of course, I guess minor spoiler, but I mean, not really, because of course we're going to see it coming. Eventually, he saves Olympus. Well, as he sees Olympus like in every single book, but that's yeah. But because Percy Jackson was so relatable to a lot of people, and the characters are a lot of fun, and also the writing style in it is like really easy. And I think it's classified as like middle school reading level, like it's standard middle school reading level. So anybody can pick up the book and be able to easily understand what's going on. Fantastic book. And of course, eventually I got into the books and really, really loved them. Kind of the minor disappointment to my dad, who is a huge Potterhead. And he really wanted me to get into the Harry Potter franchise, or at least the Harry Potter books. Though I did like the characters and the story a little bit in Harry Potter, I resonated more with Percy Jackson. So I fell hard for the Percy Jackson series. It was also great timing because I was starting to get into the Greek mythology phase of my life when this book came in. So that was just like all around great time, and everything was in favor of me liking this book. Then, of course, due to the popularity, of course, we got 5 total books in the main series, I'm going to call it. Hence why when people say the Percy Jackson series, they're mainly talking about these 5 books in particular. Now there's 6 books though, but that we're not talking about the sixth one right now. And of course, with how big the franchise is, of course, we're going to get some sort of movie or TV show. But specifically, the first book has a total of 4 different adaptations, which the first adaptation I want to say is the graphic novel. I'm not a fan of the art style. That's all I can say really about it, because I never really read them or anything. By the sound of it, it's one-to-one with the book, just in drawing form. Second adaptation of the first book is, of course, the movie. And we know how well received that was.
My mom's gone.
Yeah, Percy, I can tell you're just really torn up about the whole thing. Aw, man, my mom just got crushed to death by a minotaur? Whoa, that's crazy.
How blank her face is. How awkward that delivery is. How no one would ever mutter those words ever. Beautifully done. Beautifully done. That was truly horrible.
And once again, this is another example of Poseidon spoon-feeding something to Percy instead of letting him handle it himself. In the books, Percy actually figures out what's going on in the hotel on his own by meeting people from decades ago who have been in the hotel this whole time. In fact, one of those scenes is actually recreated in the movie. So why did they need to have the stupid voice in the head crap again? You could have just had him figure it out from meeting that kid.
Quite frankly, I do not care for this adaptational choice, as I feel they intentionally insulted the source material in an attempt to obtain a rather cheap and pointless laugh at the expense of what should have been a very intimidating and serious character. This joke fails to be amusing enough for this to have been worth it. I'm curious to know who is responsible for the screenplay for this movie. Goodness me, it's Craig Titley, the gentleman who is most famous for the questionable decisions made in the live-action Scooby-Doo movie. Mr. Titley, I'm sure you're a very pleasant person, but I rather think you are ill-suited for your current profession. Perhaps it is time to consider a change of career.
The third adaptation, which this one might surprise you if you guys are kind of like out of the know, but it got a musical adaptation. The musical was actually written by people who are dedicated fans to the book, and they did everything they could to stay loyal to the original source, with the exception of kind of like some drastic changes of like things being shortened or cut. They're not really cut out. I don't think anything was really cut out in the musical, if I remember, but a lot of things were definitely shortened just so that we get the same story beats in the musical, and there's still childhood whimsy a little bit. It's great. They tried to stick to the original material as much as they can, but for a stage version with songs, so like a lot of fun songs.
Great, you haven't been debriefed. This is way out of my pay grade. You're saying a lot, cause I don't get paid. Someone find Professor Haverbreath and tell him Peter Johnson is awake, so we better clip-clop over here.
It's Percy Jackson.
Whatever!
But then we get to the fourth adaptation, the one I'm going to be mainly talking about, which is the Disney Plus series. Rick Riordan pitched the idea to Disney in 2020, and Disney liked the idea, so for the next 4 years, they started rewriting the script, finding a cast, and producing everything. Writer strike happens, and then finally December 19th, I don't have the specifics yet, but December 2023, the first 2 episodes was released. And then the remaining 6 episodes were each released one by one every week. And the hype for the series was massive. Everyone was super excited about it, me included. I've been following like all the Percy Jackson news pages on Twitter. If you're a follower of me on Twitter, you probably have been seeing all those too. Sorry, not sorry. It was great. It was a lot of fun following it. Just like how I questioned earlier is, yes, we got another adaptation. It was one we've been hyped up for a long time. But is it really a loyal adaptation despite Rick being the executive producer and having final say on everything? I guess that's more like, is it a loyal adaptation, or is it just, oh, it's based on the book? But yeah, let's talk about that now.
I've seen a lot of young people go through this sort of thing in my time. But of all of them, I suspect that you might have the most difficult journey.
There were clearly a lot of changes, but for the most part, the series does follow the same story beats as the book. Percy's, trip to the museum and the craziness that happened there, getting kicked out of Yancey, and then his mother wanting to take him to camp, but then being attacked by the Minotaur, and then Percy making it to camp, making friends and enemies at camp, then being claimed by Poseidon, being told that there's a prophecy, and he's being accused of stealing the lightning bolt, and more than likely Hades has the lightning bolt, so he has to go and grab that lightning bolt. He brings Grover, his best friend, and Annabeth, a camper that he slowly becomes friends with. The three of them come across from New York all the way to California, with some bumps along the way, like Hades' henchmen. They run into Medusa. They go to the Golden Arch, where they were attacked by a Echidna and a Chimera. Poseidon's given him a vision that was told that he has to go to St. Monica. They meet Ares, and they go on a side quest to get his shield back for him. And then Ares gets everybody on a semi-truck of trafficked animals to get them to LA. Or at least in the series, it's to Las Vegas. And in the show, it was to Las Vegas. In the book, it's to LA. Slight change there. Either way, the trio ends up in Las Vegas. They stumble across the Lotus Casino. They waste 5 days in there. But they were able to get out, take a taxi ride to St. Monica, where Percy is given a gift of, in the book, 3 pearls, in the show, 4 pearls. And the message that anything that comes from the sea returns to the sea. So that was the hint that the pearls would get them out of trouble. After that, they come across a Krusty and his waterbed, and then eventually they find the way down into the underworld. Before they meet Hades, they come across Tartarus, where they were almost pulled in, and then they meet Hades, and then Hades says, "Oh, I have no business with the lightning bolt. I didn't steal the lightning bolt. My helm was stolen, and I'm assuming you're the one who stole it because you also stole the lightning bolt." Turns out no, and also Percy apparently has the lightning bolt because it was given to him by Ares without him knowing. So he promises Hades that he'll get his helm back, so they leave the underworld, fight Ares, get the helm back, have it returned to Hades, and then Percy travels to Mount Olympus to return the lightning bolt and convince Zeus to not go through with his war. Percy goes home, reunites with his mother, and then he goes back to camp, where the last line of the prophecy is finally fulfilled with Luke's betrayal. Luke disappears, and then the trio promise to see each other again for the next summer. I might be missing a few things here and there, but that's roughly what the story is, and that's what has not been changed. Like I said earlier, there were a lot of changes, and I'm going to be discussing them now, starting with the changes I did like.
Give me a second, I'm just starting a fight on Twitter here. Nothing makes me happier than a good old-fashioned burn-it-down fight. Huh. Okay, done.
There were more Percy and Sally scenes in the show, compared to the book, where Percy just kind of tells the audience about his relationship to his mother and the little things that she does to show him love and keep him comfortable. In the show, we actually see loving scenes between Percy and Sally, and we see the strong connection that mother and son, a stronger connection between mother and son, and all the things they went through together, and the struggles that Sally has in raising a demigod child. And it's all kinds of cute, and especially the scene where Percy was in camp and he was told about sacrificing a bit of his food to the gods as like an offering thing. Yeah, in the book, he gives up half his plate and just kind of mumbles to himself, "Hey, whoever your dad is, please let me know." While in the show, instead, we don't see that. We instead see Percy kind of like out in the woods by himself with a little bonfire, and he sacrifices a few of his jelly beans to talk to his mom. Okay, I thought that was super cute. And also kind of like makes a little bit more sense, like for Percy-wise, because he cares more about his mother than he does of his dad. He always viewed his dad as a deadbeat, because he never made any attempt to contact him or anything. I think the musical even made a joke where it's like he doesn't even bother sending child support.
Well, I want my birthday cards and fishing trips, child support and homework tips. Don't mean to whimper or whine.
In the show, where he actually does like call his mother to let his mother know, "Hey, I am safe. I'm at camp. I've made some good friends. I'm having a good time here. You don't have to worry about me." Oh my gosh, it was so cute. It was I think out of the entire series, that one tops is like one of my favorite. There's another one that's my favorite. I'll get to that one later, but I thought that was like really, really cute. Really, really like it. I like we can see bond between the two of them. I really, really like that. Another change that this one's actually a little bit more complex. Gabe's character. I actually would have liked it more if they actually show how, if they actually showed like real, no, okay. How do I word this without sounding like a complete jerk? I wish the show Gabe was just as abusive as he was in the book, because in the book he actually was both physically and verbally abusive. While in the show he was a loser, essentially. I mean, yeah, he was a loser in the book, but he's flat out abusive. While in the show he was a loser. So it did make me feel a little bit uncomfortable with how Gabe's inevitable fate in the show was going to be. I mean, Sally was able to stand up for herself in the show, unlike in the book where she took the beating. While in the show she can stand up for herself, so I'm just like, what? Eventually she's gonna murder him, but it feels a little uncomfortable. Well, in the book, it makes so much like he's completely abusive, and more than likely they're kind of like intertwined with each other, so it'd be really hard to really separate. So, kind of killing him off, making the world a little slightly better without him around it makes sense in the book. Well, in the show, it's like, do you really want murder on your hands, Sally? Do you really? But when the show ends, we actually do see that Sally doesn't kill him. Heck, she never even she was never given the Medusa head. Percy never even received the Medusa head himself. So Gabe just kind of like falls on his own, which I was perfectly fine with that. Still would have liked it better if he was actually an actual piece of garbage. I'm glad they didn't go through with Sally actually murdering him. But because his character was different in the show than he is in the book. Percy in the book spent a lot of time in camp with Annabeth, so they kind of already started growing a friendship in the book. And for the rest of the time when they were like on their quest together, they constantly talked about how, oh, our parents didn't get along, so we might not be able to get along, or it's really weird that we get along but our parents don't get along. There's a lot of like talk like that, which I mean, as I'm reading the book, I never really found it annoying. If anything, I agree with them. But in the show, I like the relationship a little bit better because you actually see actual growth. The relationship doesn't start out not necessarily the best, but it does start out like a little bit weird. They're a little bit uncomfortable. But then over time, as they're going through the quest and they're having little hiccups here and there, and their relationship with each other just gets stronger and stronger. And it's just, I like that so much better in the show. But to be able to make that work, Percy needs to not be hanging out with Annabeth as much. But then in the show, they have Percy hanging out with Luke majority of the time, which I found that really, really cool as a character thing. Where, Percy hanging out with Luke all the time. Yes, he would view Luke as a much closer friend, and they got really, really close. They really, really bonded. So when we finally get to Luke's betrayal in the end, it hits a lot harder in the show than it does in the book. One of my favorite scenes in the book is the sword duel that Percy has with Luke while Luke was teaching him how to sword fight. And that's like one of my favorite Percy and Luke scenes. And I'm glad that did make it in the show. I was disappointed it wasn't in there in episode 2, but we did eventually see it in episode 8 as a like weird flashback thing, but I'm just glad that's there. Along with Annabeth, that's another change I really like, Annabeth actually being there. Annabeth actually being there, seeing this interaction, and letting Luke know, hey, I know what you said. I heard everything. WTF. As someone who's read the books and I know where the story is going, oh my gosh, that really, like, that hurts, but like in a good way. It's great. I actually like that so much better than in the book, where I think Luke just went on this monologue and it's just, yeah, it was like, okay, yeah, evil bad guy, whatever. But I liked it. I liked the little bit more complexity that is in the show. And also, so kind of like a little side note to that, his face was lit, if you can actually see it, during that particular scene. Because of where his scar was, it looks like he was crying during that entire scene. It also doesn't help how he was actually like, he was tearing up a little bit during that, and he's actually kind of like emotionally like upset. But now that the scar right there making him look like he's constantly crying is like, ah! Okay, I thought that was really, really great. I really, really like that scene. So yeah, that's favorite from the show. That one, along with Percy's call to his mother. There's more dynamic to Grover and Percy's relationship. In the book, their relationship has been kind of static. They were best friends in the beginning, best friends in the middle, and still best friends in the end. While in the show, there was a lot more up and down in their relationship. They're still best friends the entire time, but there was still some shakiness here and there. Grover, of course, not fully reviewing his past with Annabeth and Talia and Luke, And also, like, in episode 1, where he lied about what he saw to the principal so that Percy is guaranteed kicked out of Yancey. I liked that. There's a little bit more dynamic in the relationship. I like that a lot more in the show than in the book. I also like the relationship in the book too, but in the show is a little bit more entertaining, if you get what I mean. And this is going to be a kind of a controversial take a little bit, but I actually liked it when the kids knew what they were walking into. They knew the Medusa story. So when they see Auntie M's Emporium and saw all the stone monsters, they knew immediately, oh, that is Medusa's lair. We shouldn't be here. I liked that better in the book, where they didn't realize it was Medusa's lair until she was about to remove her mask. But with Medusa's story being as popular as it is, even those who aren't that into Greek mythology knows the Medusa story, or at least some variation of it. So I actually liked it better, the kids knowing like all the mythology. I mean, there was also like the change in the show where Percy's mom is the one that told Percy all the mythology, all these stories. So, and because Percy has a strong relationship with his mother, he remembered all those stories. While in the book, his mother didn't do that, but it was Mr. Brunner, aka Chiron, who was telling all these stories, but because it's in a classroom setting, Percy has ADHD and gets bored really easy, totally relatable. He kind of zones out, so he doesn't remember all the stories. So Annabeth has to be the one to explain and re-explain all these mythos to him. But in the show, it's another really cute thing of Sally's and Percy's relationship. And also the kids knowing not exactly what they were walking into, but they got an idea of what they were walking into. Yeah, a little bit of comfort hot take, but I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. I like that change. Oh yeah, my third favorite scene, Percy trying to drive a taxi.
My fault. That was me. How do you make it go backwards? You're doing great.
I really like that. I really like that change. Not change, but I really like that scene, so I'm glad that it's there. And those are all the changes that I did like, or I agreed to. And of course, some of them being my favorite scenes in the series. Simply because it's more entertaining, it's a lot of fun, or it makes a little bit more sense for the characters. And yeah, those are pretty much everything I liked about the show. Now we're moving on to the changes that I do not like. I wish they didn't have these changes in there.
Dude, what have you been eating? Whoa, wait, hey, I'm not trying to antagonize you. I'm just genuinely curious.
Clearly the show was written for people who have read the books. There was a lot of details and a lot of things skipped out in the show because the writers, along with Rick, are assuming everybody who's watching the show has already read the book. Some of those being, Percy's sword's name, Riptide, the reason why Sally married Gabe, how the trio ended up on the train in episode 4. And this one other example, this is actually on the show because it was changed out from the book. Krusty's waterbed store, for whatever reason, is now the entrance into the underworld. While in the book, that's something they stumbled across on and they needed to quickly escape. And then they found a store called DOA Records that actually was the true gateway into the underworld. And in the show, they never explained how the trio figured out, oh, Krusty is the guardian of the underworld. They completely skipped over that. It was in between episode 6 and 7. It happened completely off screen. We have no idea how they come across that information. Same thing with how the trio ended up on the train in episode 4. It somewhere happened in between 3 and 4, and it was never explained or talked about. Which, except for that one, if you read the book, it's because, they got reward money for returning someone's poodle. The reason why Sally married Gabe was never explained, like I said, and then Riptide. I think the worst of it is the train and Krusty's waterbed shop, but Riptide's name never being mentioned throughout the entire show. There was even a perfect scene set up of Chiron, talking to Percy about the sword. Chiron could have easily mentioned Riptide's name then and there, except he never did. And that's frustrating. That's really, really frustrating. But if you've read the book, it doesn't matter, because you already know Riptide's name. You know the reason why Sally married Gabe. You know how the trio ended up the train. You still don't know why the Enters in the Underworld is in Krusty's, but that's... Of course, their biggest target is people who've read the books, but I wish I'm kind of going in circles here, so I'm sorry about that, but you get what I mean. You miss all those details if you've not read the book, and I wish they didn't write the show that way. And this is another technical thing. The pacing in the show was a little off. Like, it feels stretched. It feels slow. Which, of course, the pacing does fix itself a little bit if you just binge watch the entire series in one go. So my opinion there is they shouldn't have released an episode per week, because that messes with the pacing and the tension in the end, the energy of the show. They should have just released it all in one go instead of one episode per week. The only time a once per week episode thing would have worked is if those episodes were twice as long. We've slowly entered a standard of streaming shows where each episode is like feature-length movie long, except Percy's episodes are not that. They're actually kind of a standard 25 to 30 minute length, or original standard 25 to 30 minute length, not counting end credits and recap stuff. But because those episodes are much shorter, it messes with the pacing, and it's just like, I wish they just released it all in one go instead of once per week. But the only pacing issue that doesn't fix itself is Echidna's monologue on the train. Echidna goes on this really, really long monologue that could have easily been cut in half, and you wouldn't have lost any information. If anything, what you would have gained by cutting that dialogue in half is keeping the tension of the scene, as the scene starts and you're slowly learning, oh, this is Echidna, the mother of all monsters, and she has a mysterious monster. We later find out it's the Chimera, but we have this monster, this little chihuahua thing that we don't know what it is yet, and it's getting rambunctious, it's getting a little noisy, and a little antsy. Wait, Echidna's still talking. Why is Echidna still talking? And okay, oh yeah. Ha! Okay. Or it's not even a ha! It was more like, oh yes, there's the attack, but it's... Echidna's monologue goes way too long. It should have been cut in half. Hephaestus's trap. Okay, let's actually start with the positive on this particular scene. I really like how this was Annabeth's character moment where she's finally disillusioned by the gods, and she tells off Hephaestus that Percy's not like them, she's not going to be like them, and screw you, and especially screw my mother. I'm going to take Percy home and we're going to continue our quest. Really nice. I actually did really, really like that. It was a really nice Annabeth character development moment. But I didn't like the setup of the love tunnel trap, because that's what it was. It was a trap specifically for Ares and Aphrodite. I mean, heck, in the original trap in the book, when Percy grabs the shield, it releases a signal where a bunch of robotic spiders comes out, creating this net to hold what were supposed to be Aphrodite and Ares down, but instead Annabeth and Percy. And the cameras come out and start filming the group, because the whole point of this trap were to humiliate the cheaters, essentially. And that's what that trap was supposed to be. But in the show, though, it didn't look like it was a trap for Ares and Aphrodite. It looks like it was a trap set up for whichever demigods come across it, because clearly Ares was going to send someone else to go grab his shield, because he's not going to go grab it himself for whatever reason. Hephaestus knew this, or when he saw Percy and Annabeth entered, figured out, oh, they're sent here by Ares, and then quickly rearranged his trap to be for them, and also in hopes of giving this chance to Annabeth to make up with her mother. And it's just, yeah, it's a little confusing. It conflicted about this scene because I mostly don't like it because it's not, it's not from the book, clearly. But I did like it because it was a good Annabeth moment. But I'm really conflicted about this change, and because I'm so conflicted about it, I don't like this change. Wish they kept the original trap from the book in the show and gave Annabeth a different scene to have her little moment of I don't care about the gods anymore moment. I wish that was somewhere else. The no bathtub joke. This one I was actually, for whatever reason, I'm really disappointed about this joke. Or not disappointed about the joke, but I'm disappointed that it wasn't included in the show. Because in the scene, or in the book, the trio enter DOA and they meet Charon. And they try to lie their way past him because, well, they're clearly not dead, and Charon is not going to let undead people into the underworld because, well, he's not allowed to. But the trio tried to lie their way through by saying, oh, we all drowned in the bathtub together. And Karen makes this comment where it's like, oh, it must have been a really big bathtub. Super funny. It was really great in the book. Because they changed up so much for the show where, again, it's Krusty who is guarding the entrance of the underworld for whatever reason. It also doesn't help how he's also easily defeated, so anybody can go into the underworld. I just realized. Anyway. But Charon isn't the same as he was in the book. He didn't care what the trio has to say, so he wasn't as fun in the show as he was in the book. Or heck, even less so than in the musical.
Oh, look, it's the Vienna Boys Choir. They crashed their bus on the way to sing for the Vatican.
They're kids.
They're lucky. Their voices will never change now.
So, yeah, I'm just disappointed that joke is not in there for whatever reason. But there was a lot of jokes that didn't make it into the show that I wish it was there. Because over time, the show started kind of taking itself a little bit more seriously. And there wasn't as many funny moments. And I kind of missed those from the book. Because that's kind of what made the book a lot of fun to read, is all those fun jokes. But I don't know. I guess that's just me. I didn't like that.
If you hadn't bought all those damn snacks.
It was the Hoover Dam, and I was hungry.
This change, I hated the absolute most. Like, I hate this change. And that is Annabeth being cut in the underworld. Being cut out from the underworld. In the book, she was with Percy and Grover all the way up to the end, all the way up to Hades, and then all three of them escaped together. In the show, for whatever reason, when they got to Aphrodite, for whatever reason, I mean, for one, Aphrodite looks so much different in the show than it is in the book. The entirety of the underworld looks very different from what it is in the book, which is really weird. For some reason, Annabeth, being stuck in Aphrodite and being forced to leave the underworld before the two boys because she had some sort of regret that trapped her there. Like, what? Like, I did not like that. And then she was just not there for the Tartarus scene or for the Hades scene. I did not. She should have been there. There was no reason for her to not to be there. More than likely, this particular scene, Aphrodite scene, something that has to do with her character, for the rest of the series as a whole, not just for this particular season. But I still didn't like it because, again, Annabeth should have been there in Hades' castle with the other two. There was no reason for her to not be there at all. Yeah, I did not like that at all. I hate that change, and I really hope that when comes season 2, because we are getting a season 2, yay, they don't do that to Annabeth again. I really hope that they don't try to cut her out from something when she's supposed to be there. Because that doesn't happen until book 3, by the way. Minor spoiler warning, but book 3 is going to be really interesting. Anyway, most hated change is Annabeth being forced to leave the underworld early. Next up, the changes that I was weirded out by. There are some changes in the show where it's like, yeah, I either clearly like it or I clearly hated it, but there's also some where it's like, I didn't hate it, I didn't like it, and it's weird. It's like, I don't know how to feel about them.
Can I get you anything? Fresh pomegranate juice, a snack?
Actually, my mother.
Boom. Straight to business. I admire the cut of your jib. Little nautical reference for you.
And of course, the first one is, I've already went over, is Gabe not being nearly as abusive as he was in the book. But I was glad for the change of, because they changed up his character so much in the show, and he's not nearly as abusive or a scumbag as he was in the book, they didn't have Sally essentially murder him in the show. That particular change I was fine, but changing up Gabe's character to not be as abusive, I was weirded out by that change. Grover's personality also. In the book, Grover was far more skittish and scared of everything and everyone, essentially. In the show, though, he's not as skittish, or he's not as easily scared in the show for whatever reason. Because in the show, he actually is a lot more braver. I mean, heck, he can also, lie a lot easier in the show as well. Because in the book, with the incident with Mrs. Dodds and no one remembers Mrs. Dodds anymore, Percy was only able to trick Grover because Grover has the hardest time lying. But they changed it in the show where, he can easily lie when he needs to. He knows how to manipulate a conversation or get information in a very manipulative way. Grover in the show can easily stand up for himself in front of Ares, while in the book, Grover is absolutely terrified of Ares. So it's weird. I don't know how to feel about the change in Grover's personality in the show. And that's all I can really say about that. The whole obsession over glory and that being the one thing to get the god's attention for you, that's a weird change. I really don't know how to feel about that, and hopefully either they tone down that or they actually better expand on it in the show. For the time being, I don't know how I feel about this whole glory concept thing. Okay, here's two things here where it's not so much I was weirded out by the change, but I wish they did it differently. The dialogue between Annabeth and Percy when they were at the lake scene when the capture of the flag game was over. Because Annabeth and Percy in the book, I mean, first off, the fight between Percy and Clarice in the book, several times in the fight where they end up in the water, and when Percy was struggling in the fight, and then he steps into the water and he feels rejuvenated, so he was able to continue the fight and eventually beat Clarice. Well, in the show, he was barely able to fight 3 people off, which I think in the book was like 4 or 5 people. But he was able to do that without needing to step into the water. Though I wish in the show they still have him step into the water. But thinking about it from a filmmaker's perspective, it makes sense to not have Percy constantly step into the water to continue the fight because continuity, complications, and when someone gets wet, it takes them forever to dry off, especially when they're using, their actual clothes that retains water. I get why they during the fight itself, they're not having Percy actually step into the water during his fight. Between Percy and Annabeth, the dialogue in the book, it's Annabeth actually putting the pieces together and telling Percy, just step in the water real quick. I want to confirm something. And I think in the book, Percy, did it and then stepped out, felt different, stepped back in, and then he was claimed. And there's actual dialogue between Percy and Annabeth also kind of mumbling to herself as well. There's a lot more conversation going on there. I wish we had that in the show, because in the show, it was just Annabeth coming up out of nowhere, thinking to herself, and then pushing Percy into the water. I would have liked it better if Annabeth actually started out by asking Percy, hey, can you step in the water real quick? I want to see something. And then Percy, kind of like, because they didn't have really a good relationship at that point, Percy says, no, I'm not stepping into the water for her. What are you, crazy? And then Annabeth goes, okay, fine. And then she goes up and pushes him. I would have liked that better than just her coming up and just pushing him out of nowhere. To add to that, there is a minor editing error. I'm calling it an editing error, where in the Krusty shop, there was a shot where after Krusty was tied up, there was a shot that was mostly focused on Percy, but Annabeth is like out of focus, but in the corner. But Annabeth is talking. Whoever decided to use that shot in this show deserves a kick in the butt. Not to be fired or anything, but deserves a kick in the butt. Because why are you focused on Percy when he's not talking or doing anything at all, just sitting there staring? But Annabeth is the one who's talking. The shot should have been mainly focused on her, not on Percy. But whatever, minor gripe on there. Percy is always wet when he leaves a water source. Please don't take that out of context. Because in the book, whenever Percy leaves some sort of water source or when he interacts water, he's never wet. He always comes out dry. Hence in the bathroom scene where while everyone gets sprayed with water, he's 100% dry. That should have also been in the case when he fell into the river over by the arch. When he steps out, he should have been 100% dry. Technically, in the Tunnel of Love, he would also supposed to be 100% dry as well. But I do understand from like the filmmaker's perspective, that's annoying because the kids get wet and then you have to wait hours for them to dry. So that's hours they don't have. But we do have this cut though. Instead of soaking wet Percy coming out, he could have been perfectly dry. I don't know. Majority of the scenes, Percy should have been dry, not constantly wet. But maybe that's a change where it's like he gets wet. He gets wet when he enters water. He does get wet. He doesn't go instantly dry or whatever. The Lotus Casino scene. Why is Hermes hanging out in the Lotus Casino? If you read the book on this, the trio stumbled across the casino and they accidentally wasted 5 days in there, and they didn't find out until they've actually left, or after Percy dragged the other two outside of the casino and then found a newspaper that had the date that revealed, 5 days has passed, you have 1 day until the summer solstice. But in the show, of course, they had to enter in there because where Hermes was, because they needed to borrow his teleporting taxi for whatever reason. And again, for whatever reason, Hermes is hanging out there, even though that's not like a normal place Hermes would hang out in. I mean, that might be a place that Apollo could be hanging out in. It probably would have made more sense if Apollo is in there and they're like, hey, we need to borrow your chariot. Any other god, I don't know. It's weird. But also Hermes himself was also really weird too. It's like, dude, do you want the kids to succeed or not? As a god of thievery, he should have been aware that Annabeth pickpocketed him the moment that she touched him. So if he didn't want the trio to succeed, hence why he kind of kept them trapped for 5 days, then he should have not let Annabeth take his keys, and she shouldn't have not left a note on how to use his taxi. But because he let Annabeth take his key and let the trio take his car, and he left the note on the car on how to use his left the note on his car on how to use the car, then he shouldn't have kept the trio there for 5 days. What is it, Hermes? What is it? Do you want them to succeed or not? Also, I was initially confused on why. Actually, before I get to that, how did Percy find out they were there for 5 days? Did he see a date somewhere? I mean, Hermes' watch is an analog. Yeah, analog? No. Yeah, it's an analog watch. It has the hands. It doesn't. It's not. There's no date on it or anything. So how did Percy know that they were there for 5 days without seeing a date somewhere? I was also weirded out because it's like they missed the deadline. So the gods should have been already in war, which the way Zeus was talking about, it looks like they were just about to start a war. They were actually just about to start it as soon as Percy arrived. But it was weird that they changed it where it's like, oh, they haven't reached their deadline yet. Because the way that Zeus talked, they could have easily just been like, oh, Percy barely got the bolt to Zeus, and Zeus is like, well, thank you for giving me the bolt, but because you just barely made it, technically you didn't make it, so it's just gonna go through with a war. So it's like, I don't know. That was a weird change that I'm not really on board with. Or I wasn't on board with. But hey, we still get this fun scene though. Yeah, another one of my favorites. And then last thing, the technical problems. Okay, I already mentioned the messed up Annabeth shot in Krusty's shop, and also how to fix the pacing, or how weird the pacing was. But the biggest thing that nearly every single person complained about, including myself, is the lighting. Like, oh my gosh, the lighting is horrendous. My first time watching the show, I was actually watching it on my dad's projector. And it's a high quality projector, but when we got to like the darker scenes, like the Minotaur fight, or at least the worst of it was when they're in Aphrodite in the underworld, where that one was so dark we couldn't see anybody. There was also some weird filter thing on there. I mean, heck, when the taxi scene teleported, all we could see was Percy, and I could not see Annabeth and Grover in there at all. It's like they completely disappeared. And I got worried for a little bit. I thought they did disappear, but no, it's just poor lighting. But was my experience on my dad's projector. But when I was watching the show again for this rant, I watched it again on my mother's 4K television set. And apparently someone has already messed with the brightness setting, because according to my youngest sister, she actually brightened the TV all the way to max, and I can see everything. I could see the Minotaur fight perfectly fine. Aphrodite looked fine. Well, at least I can see everything. And I got confused and like, oh, did they finally fix the lighting in between me watching on my dad's projector and then on my mom's TV set? No. Apparently a lot of people have this problem where depending on the screen that they're watching on, like even small like phone screens some people are watching on, which I do not recommend, unless you have a high quality screen that is on max brightness, you can't see crap. And that is really, really bad. And by the looks of it, not by the sound of it, the behind the scenes footage of the sets, everything is lit correctly. Everything is bright and you can see everything. You can make a scene brighter, but all technical stuff. It's easier to edit something darker from a bright shot. So everything on set was lit properly. But for whatever reason, in post, they made the dark scenes like so dark that on the poor quality screens, you can't see anything. I don't know if that's the post-production's fault or if it's like the Disney Plus service's fault. And I really hope that for the next season, this should be an easy fix for this first season as well. Hopefully someone in the higher ups fixes this. The number of complaints on the lighting is enormous, and if Disney's ignoring that, just why? But yeah, there's my advice to everybody. If at all possible, try to find a high quality TV set to TV set to watch and make sure it's on max brightness. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to see anything. But if you don't have those as an available option for you, I'm sorry. Do the best you can, I guess. And that's about all I have to say about season 1. Yes, there was several ups and downs, and the downs are like really, really down. But I really hope that the producers at Disney give Rick the chance to actually go through the full 5 seasons, because I do really, really want to see all 5 books adapted into live action, because I do see great potential in this. And I also really hope that Disney doesn't take their negative criticism about the show at full face value, because as far as I can tell, everyone who's watched the show didn't hate the show. I mean, I do not hate the show. Heck, I don't even dislike the show. I do like the show. I do find it enjoyable. Yes, there were some flaws and you know, some things that, I really did hate as expressed in the rest of this video. But I really am hoping that as the show continues, it only continues to get better, and we do continue all the way into the end, and we don't get too many problems in the middle, and Disney continues to allow this series to continue on. Otherwise, that's all I really have to say, and yeah, I'll see you guys all in the next video, I guess. Bye!